Hola de nuevo a todos. Hola de nuevo a todos, espero que hayáis disfrutado del desayuno, que hayáis podido compartir ideas y sobre todo que hayáis votado vuestro póster favorito. ¿Sigo?
Welcome back, everyone. We hope you enjoyed the break, the short break actually, and the chance to share ideas. In the end, that is what learning communities are all about. Curiosity, dialogue, and connection. In this regard, Professor Stephen Heppell is one of the world's leading voices in learning, technology, and educational innovation. Today, he'll be sharing with us what other schools and educational systems are doing with artificial intelligence, as well as what we can learn from their experiences.
El profesor Heppell es el director de la Cátedra Felipe Segovia de Innovación para el Aprendizaje de la Universidad Camilo José Cela, por lo que es un honor poder recibirle otra vez en el simposio.
So we ask you to join us in giving him a really warm welcome as well as a round of applause. And Professor Heppell, we kindly ask you to stay on stage after your talk since you will be joining us in the next session.
Perfect.
Okay.
Gosh. Well, hello friends. It's lovely to be back and feels like family for lots of good reasons. You know, I was very ill the last year, so this feels a renaissance. So I'm going to be, thank you. I promise not to die in 20 minutes. This is in English, but lots of pictures, so it'll be fine. We're going to talk about what others are doing around the world, not just in AI, but it's an extraordinary time for learning. I can't think of a time. I started teaching in the 1970s, and obviously I was only about 2, you know, and I can't remember a decade as exciting as the one ahead. But the pace of change is pretty scary. So let's look a little at what that change is shaping up to be. And we might as well start with universities. This is a degree I came across the other day. It's a completely open degree. You turn up and for 3 years, you go to any lecture you want. It's completely open. They talk about it as a polymathic degree. And at the end, you write a narrative and you say, well, here's my learning journey, here's my epistemology, if you like, here's what I've learned. And here's a school just down the road from where I live, Ipswich High School, a fee-paying school, where the children from 16 are on university courses. They're not going to wait till 18. They want to start straight away. And they carry those credits on into university life. I mean, in Spain, you're not allowed to have those credits until you reach 18, but you can do the work and just pick up the credits at the last minute. There are always ways. You can imagine how popular this is with parents and children. This is the London Interdisciplinary School, which is interesting in many ways, one of which being it's a school for adults. So you can't start until you're in your 20s. But although it's a school, as you can just about see, particularly if I zoom in on it, I think, they've been given the power to award degrees as of last year. So here's a school that's awarding degrees for adults, which is curious. Or here's maybe the Open University, designed for people who were not going the normal route. But I used to be external examiner on their T180 course. 30% of our students were still at school, degree course. And currently, I don't know if you can see that from from the back and zooming up a bit. Currently 13,200 school students are doing degrees with them. So what you might learn from this so far is that all the nice walls we built around learning comfortably are getting softer and lower. They're not gone, but they're getting softer and lower. They're much easier to jump across. And maybe let's also, looking at the time we have time, just worth reminding ourselves as well that universities around the world are now giving away their degrees. Here's free public universities in Germany. Here's free master's degrees in Switzerland, full scholarship. They'll pay your fees, they'll pay your boarding, they'll pay your food, they'll probably pay your taxi. Here's Switzerland, all drug money. Here's Norway, and they're saying anything you like, free, and more and more and more. Now, what that tells you is that the act of graduating isn't the valuable bit. The bit that's of value is belonging to a community. We're here as a community of purpose, actually. We have a purpose, which is learning. And Rebecca this morning from the chair said we're part of the same family. That's the bit that's valuable. Not the exam pass, not the certificate, not any of the... Well, let's have a look at what's happening in schools. So in schools, obviously, in Denmark, they're doing crazy things in the curriculum. They teach tree climbing. And when I said to them, this is a school, and the tree's in the middle of a road. And I said to them, isn't that a bit dangerous? And they said, no, there are trees everywhere. If we don't teach children to climb trees, think of the danger they'll be in. So tree climbing is on the curriculum. Everything that's dangerous should be on the curriculum. By the way, in Denmark, for teachers here, every 1 hour you teach, you get 1 hour of preparation time. I'll just let that sink in, Here's Yokohama, where the kids do their exercise in a net above the classroom. Here's, we were talking last night about whether there's a place for books. Well, here we are in Gaza. This was last week. I didn't take this photograph, but even in a tent in a bomb site, there are still people using books. But maybe if we go to Australia, say, what are they doing with the books? They're building classrooms from them. So everywhere we look, something different is happening. There is no right way to do all this. Here's on the wall of the Danish school. This is the dreaded measure man. You can see he's capturing the creative imagination of the children. He's running around, and he represents a ministry official. Look, even his legs are made from rulers. So they see the measuring as the ogre to be feared across the board. And here we are in, perhaps one last one. This was a school I was working in, I did a lot of work with in Perth in Australia, where they've just dug a hole through the school so they can have a drop shaft. Physics teachers here will love this. They have a shaft where they can drop things, and it's got fans. They put a small dog in, and the dog sort of hovered mid-floor. Then you can measure, you can check your Newtonian physics and so on. By the way, in that school, every single pipe, every piece of conduit is transparent so that you can see where every wire goes. No secrets. The whole school is transparent. Not just the kids, but the curriculum. And that's probably enough of those watching the clock. Help, And then, of course, there's outdoor learning. Children moving during the day. We have a controversial 10 years in England of telling children, what's the phrase, sit down and don't fidget. Turned out to be the worst thing you could do. Here's some German research where they were simply measuring the impact of movement. The group here, this is time, and the vertical axis is attention. Not entirely sure how they measured that. But as the day went on, the children who never moved in their desks, their attention waned. The children who moved the end of each lesson, that was okay. But the children who moved constantly within their lessons had zoned classrooms, and had different tasks at stand-up desks. They were the ones who showed greater focus at the end of the day than the others. And this is, I'm here with my wife, who's looking after me, thank you, but is also twice as clever as me. This is her daughter, my daughter, running a beach school on the coast where tiny children are doing environmental science with all the tools of technology, with the microscopes, and of course the bucket and spades, and they're looking for invasive species, and they're metering weather, climate, flora, fauna, and they're 4 years old. And the experts they're working with are 80 years old, the old fisher folk in the village. So suddenly both ends of the age continuum are locked into a world of learning, which is exciting. And here's, I rather like this one. This is a group who are learning imperative verbs through play in the playground. So movement and play turns out to be grammar too. That's in Sidlesham School. It's a lovely place. So, gosh, keeping an eye on the clock, 20 minutes. Well, it's a pacey world. So let's think a bit about AI then, because, AI is going to be done differently by everybody, everywhere. And a lot of the rhetoric, I'm afraid really, well, I love AI, but a lot of the rhetoric is about individualized learning. I was just doing an interview at the back saying just this. People talk about personalized learning, individual. And yet teachers here know that learning is all about what you do together, what we do together today. It's that collaboration. So what does that start to look like when we do a bit of group work? Well, this morning, just before breakfast, I thought I'd ask, because I knew I was going to be with you, I'd ask GPT this. I said, look, I've got a group of 4-year-olds, and, some of them love books. Leonie's full of imagination, but she's actually hopeless at organising things, and Florence is pretty geeky. That was all I said to GPT. I didn't say, would you do some work? And GPT came back very excited and said, what a lovely, well-rounded little team. Not, here's a differentiated worksheet for each one. What a nice team. And then it said, would you like me to work on that? And it gave me a nice little summary to pass on to them. And I said, well, actually, I'd really like a group project that plays to all their strengths. And could you make that a bit fun too, please? Because a lot of the fun seems to have disappeared. And it said, would you like one of those? And I said, well, I'd like them both, really. Look, here's, and by the way, they're studying Romans in history, because we might as well have a curriculum focus. And dear old GP, this was this morning before breakfast, came back and said, well, there's loads of stuff. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to build activities for them all. Here they all are. And this is what you need to set up the activity. This is how it plays to their individual strengths. At the end, they get to present it all to the Senate or to the Emperor. Would you like that as a short lesson plan or an activity sheet? And so it goes on. Now, you might say, well, hang on, Stephen. You've generated loads of work now. How the heck's that going to get marked? So I thought I'd better show you this. My granddaughter, Elodie, of whom I'm very fond, and she lives with me. She's 9, so you'll recognise this as authentic 9-year-old's work. She produced this with all its crossings out and its bit of perfect pencil, to make it better. So I wanted to contrast AI's marking of that with what a teacher would have time to do. A teacher has 30 children, and she's a bright little button, so she doesn't need too much help. And here's the second half of it, and you can see some of the words have been, commented on. So I simply took out my camera and sent it to ChatGPT. I didn't use anything expensive, and said, I wonder if you could give me some feedback to give to little Elodie. And I got back detailed stuff about praising her. Your work is full of imagination. And by the way, I gave this to her, of course. And comment on what was working really well. And then some whoops-a-daisy, so it's real, whoops. And then some thoughts about, hang on a second, let me just come back. And then some thoughts about what the next steps might be. Well, you might try reading it aloud and think about your, teachers who will recognise the quality of the feedback. And then it said, of course, some nice encouragement. And I love the fact that it says warm things. It says, would you like me to mark up a short paragraph to show you how the subtle changes I've meant could still work in your voice, not somebody else's voice? Of course, she said yes. And then last of all, I really, really liked. And this is one child's feedback from one piece of work, but I love the fact that it ended with this little comment, which of course I read to her, and it said, I read millions of examples of children's work. Yours is pretty good. Now, imagine a 9-year-old hearing that. This is fabulous stuff. We still need a teacher, we still need a classroom, we still need exercise books, and the teacher needed to look at it because, it's maybe a little imperfect, and maybe there's a few things to tweak, but starting to look powerful, isn't it? And here's, maybe let's do the same. This is one, I'll share this with you so you can go and try it with your own children at home. But it's a very simple thing. And can you read that from the back? Is that big enough from the back? Wave a hand if you can. Halfway can. Yeah, they can. Good. So you're just saying, think of a character in a series of books you enjoy. I tried it with Beowulf, an early English poem. Worked pretty good. And I want AI to embody their personality, their speech, their style, all the history of what had happened to them in previous books, all the forward-looking of what might happen to them. She's clearly going to get it together with Harry at some point, and we might anticipate that. And I'm now going to start a conversation with her. And by the way, you can see there, I said, well, actually, she's going to read that to her class, so would you mind doing that in Spanish as well? And of course, come straight back in any language you like. And she's now having a live conversation with a character from a book she loves and cares about. And what a lovely way to seduce children back into literature. And what fun, what absolute fun. And the last example I've got, time is galloping away from us, is I thought we better do physics, So this one was saying, well, the target here is 12-year-olds, and they're studying physics, so could you just put all that into Somali for me? Well, I'll tell you what, let's do it. We've got time, so I'm just going to go to chat GPT, and I better type it all in, didn't I? And I'm going to pop that prompt in, and let's see what we get. So the prompt said, got a 12-year-old studying physics with me, and can you do some worksheets? By the way, one of the kids is Somali, so can you do it in Somali? And here's what we literally just got back now. So it's a short hook, just about common sense knowledge of energy, a simple quiz for 12-year-olds who aren't really on top of their game, with an answer sheet, of course. a harder quiz on the same topic and an answer sheet, and by the way, a Somali version too. And you know that I can hand the answers back in and get them all marked as well. Now, going forward in all this, you've got some galloping to do. We've been really good in SEC at doing what the others couldn't do. We did brain food, and what happened with brain food was, well, the prison service in England copied it and found that by changing the diet of prisoners, the violence levels dropped dramatically. We went to this show, the South Summit. It's going to come in a minute, and showed off the work our kids did with their maker spaces. Some of you will remember we were almost first into maker spaces in Spain, and these kids built their Tesla coil 1,000,000 volts when they turned it on. All the people in the front row with phones, the phones melted, you know. Of course they did. They learned from it, you know. We were really quick into getting children to have agency to design their own spaces. We're only 100 meters from the learning lab that was designed by school children in SEC to be the space they would want to learn in when they were undergraduates. Sorry, it's my watch telling me to shut up. And we, of course, we listened to what the children said, and we built those spaces. Here's our version of their cardboard space. We've been really, really good at these things. You know, we've done, look, Santa Isabel with outdoor learning. There's learning journeys around the centre of Madrid. And if I go to the Foresight thing, which is a UK government suddenly changed direction, I realised that the community and the family are important. As a family, we've been really good at leading the charge. So with AI, we're going to have to be brave. And I thought it would be interesting to see what children are talking about around the world. So I went to DeepSeek. I went to the Chinese one because I'm busy talking to a lot of head teachers in China at the moment. So I went to DeepSeek and said, go to all the school councils around the world that haven't locked down their agendas and their minutes and their papers. That's almost all of them, because they want people to read their stuff. And give me a word cloud of the things that kids around the world value the most. And it's not exam passes, it's not the level of fees, it's not bullying, it's not gun crime. Right at the middle, right at the centre of their hopes and dreams are belonging. So we're going to harness AI. There's such, I mean, walking around the posters, you're doing it already, but we're going to harness it to do it our way, to do it with each other, to show the world that AI isn't just about individual effort, it's about collaborative endeavour. And I, for one, am really, really pleased. Well, I'm quite pleased to not be dead, but I'm pleased to be back amongst you to watch all this happen. Thank you for listening. Thank you very much.
I think you are not staying. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, profesor Heppell, por sus ideas y sobre todo por demostrarnos que la inteligencia artificial puede ayudarnos a hacer la educación más significativa y más humana también.